I counted the footsteps on our staircase the night my parents first left me home alone, and there were 14. Our staircase has 13 steps. I have never been able to explain the 14th one, and I still live in that house. I was 16 that year, and my parents were driving up to my aunt's cabin for one night, just one, to help her deal with a fallen tree that had crushed part of her porch. They asked if I wanted to come. I said no, because I had a chemistry test on Monday and because, honestly, I liked the idea of having the house to myself. I had never been alone overnight before. My best friend Priya was going to come over around 8 to watch movies, and then she was going to sleep in the guest room, so it wasn't even really alone. My parents left around 4 in the afternoon, and the house felt enormous and quiet in a way I liked at first, sunlight coming through the kitchen windows, the dog asleep in a patch of it on the floor. Priya texted around 6:30 to say her mom needed the car and she couldn't come until later, maybe not until 10. I told her that was fine. I ordered a pizza, ate it in front of the TV, and didn't think much of the house around me until it got dark outside and I realized I hadn't turned on any lights except the living room lamp. I got up to do a walkthrough, flipping switches, and that's when I first noticed the stairs creaking, even though I wasn't on them. Just a single creak, from partway up, like weight settling onto old wood. Our house was almost 60 years old. Things settled all the time. I didn't think about it again for almost an hour. Around 8, the dog started staring at the staircase. Not barking, not growling, just standing at the bottom of it with her ears up, absolutely still, for maybe a full minute before she turned around and went back to her bed like nothing had happened. I remember laughing at myself for how fast my heart was going. I texted Priya a picture of the dog with the caption, "She's being weird LOL," and she sent back a ghost emoji, and that was that. I didn't call my parents. It felt like a stupid thing to bother them with, a dog staring at stairs. By 9 I had moved to the couch with a blanket and my phone, half watching something, half scrolling, and I heard it clearly this time, a footstep. Not a creak that could be explained by temperature or with settling, but a footstep, heel and then the soft roll forward, on the stairs. I muted the TV. I sat there for probably 30 seconds not breathing. Nothing else happened. I told myself it was the house cooling down for the night, the pipes, the wind outside rattling something. I got up anyway and stood at the bottom of the stairs and looked up into the dark of the second floor landing, and I did not turn the hallway light on, because some part of me didn't want to see anything if there was something to see. I went back to the couch. Priya texted at 9:40 to say she probably wasn't going to make it until closer to 11, her mom's shift ran long. I told her it was fine, even though it wasn't really fine anymore, even though something in me had started keeping track of the house the way you keep track of a person you don't trust in a room with you. At 10:15 I heard the footsteps again, and this time I counted them, because counting felt like the only thing I could do that wasn't panicking. 1, 2, 3, all the way up, evenly spaced, unhurried, like someone who lived there and had walked those stairs 10,000 times before. I know our staircase. I have lived in that house my whole life. There are 13 steps. I counted 14 distinct sounds before the footsteps stopped at the top. I did not go up. I want to be very clear about that, because when I've told this story before, people always ask why I didn't just go check, and the answer is that I have never in my life been more certain that I did not want to know something. My legs actually felt heavy, the way they do in a dream when you're trying to run and your body won't listen, and I remember gripping the arm of the couch so hard my knuckles hurt. The dog had come off her bed by then and was pressed against my shins, not making a sound, just leaning her whole weight into me like she wanted to disappear inside my legs. I looked at the clock on the cable box, 10:16, and told myself I would give it exactly 5 minutes of silence before I let myself relax, and I watched those minutes tick by one at a time, and the house gave me nothing else, no creak, no footstep, just the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, which somehow made it worse, because it meant I would have heard anything else clearly. I called my mom. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail, which made sense. She was probably somewhere in the mountains with no signal. I called my dad. Same thing. I texted them both, call me when you can, not an emergency, because I didn't want them to panic and drive home on a dark mountain road, and also, if I'm honest, because I still half thought I was imagining things and I didn't want to be the kid who screamed wolf. I sat on the couch with the dog pulled up next to me, which she never does, and I watched the staircase for almost 40 minutes. Nothing moved. No more footsteps. Around 11, headlights swept across the living room window and I nearly cried with relief, but it was just Priya's mom dropping her off. I met her at the door before she could even knock and I told her everything, fast, probably not making a lot of sense, and to her credit she didn't tell me I was being dramatic. She just said, okay, we're not going upstairs, we're staying down here with the lights on, and that's what we did. We stayed in the living room with every light on and the TV loud enough to drown out the quiet. At one point Priya asked me, very quietly, if I was sure it was footsteps and not just the house cooling down, the way old houses tick and pop as the temperature drops, and I told her about the count, 14, and she went quiet in a way that told me she believed me more than she wanted to admit. We sat with our backs against the couch cushions facing the staircase the whole time, like we were waiting for something to come down it, though neither of us said that part out loud. Every few minutes one of us would glance over, just to check, and every time the staircase was exactly as empty and ordinary as it had always been, which somehow didn't make either of us feel any better. My parents called back around 11:30, and my mom's voice went tight when I told her, the specific type of a parent trying not to scare their kid further. My dad wanted to call the police to do a welfare check, and he did, and 2 officers came out around midnight and walked through the entire house, upstairs and down, closets, the attic hatch, my parents' room, mine, the guest room, even the crawlspace access panel and the hallway closet that I'd honestly forgotten existed. They found nothing. No open windows, no signs of forced entry, no one there. One of the officers, an older guy, stood at the bottom of the stairs for a second before he left and said, half joking, old houses talk, and I remember wanting to ask him if old houses count to 14, but I didn't. My parents drove home that night instead of waiting until morning, arriving around 2:30, and I don't think I've ever been so happy to hear a car in the driveway. Priya and I had fallen asleep sitting up on the couch, the dog wedged between us. Nothing else happened that night. Nothing happened the next night either, or the one after that. Here's the part one still think about. A few weeks later, my dad was redoing the carpet on the staircase, pulling up the old runner to replace it, and he called me over because he'd found something strange under the 14th stair tread, the very top one, where the landing begins. There was a section of wood there, just at that spot, that didn't match the rest, slightly different grain, like it had been replaced at some point long before we ever bought the house. He knocked on it, and it sounded hollow in a way none of the other steps did. He never pulled it up. My mom didn't want him to, and honestly, neither did I. I remember standing at the bottom of the stairs while he crouched there with his flashlight, and I asked him, as casually as I could manage, if he could tell how deep the hollow space went, and he said he couldn't tell without cutting into it, and that he wasn't about to do that.
He tapped it once more, lightly, almost thoughtfully,
and for just a second I thought I heard something answer back. A second, softer knock from somewhere underneath. Though he swears to this day he didn't hear it and that I imagined it because I told him the whole story by then, and he thinks it primed me to hear things that weren't there. He just laid the new carpet over it and we never talked about it again as a family, not really. I'm 24 now. My parents still live in that house, and so do I, for now, saving up before I move out. Most nights it's completely ordinary, and I forget any of this ever happened. But every so often, maybe once every couple of months, always late, always when I'm the only one still awake downstairs, I'll hear someone come down the stairs to get water or use the bathroom, and without meaning to, I count. It's always 13. It is always 13, until the night it isn't, and I have learned that when that happens, the safest thing to do is not look up, and just wait, very still, for the house to go quiet again. My mother has been dead for 3 years, and that night, alone in her old house, I got a text message from her number that just said, "I know you're home." I still have the message. I have never deleted it, and I have never shown it to anyone, until now. I need to back up. When my mom died, my dad couldn't stand to be in the house anymore, so he moved in with his brother 2 states away and asked me to handle selling the place. I live 40 minutes from there, and between my job and everything else, it had taken almost a year to get the house ready, cleaning out closets, deciding what to keep, meeting with a realtor who kept telling me the market wasn't great for houses that old. I'd been going out on weekends, a few hours at a time, never staying past dark if I could help it. Not because the house scared me exactly. It was just heavy to be in. Every drawer had something in it that made me stop and sit down for a while. That particular Saturday I'd planned to leave by 6, but I got pulled into sorting through a filing cabinet in my mom's office, old tax documents, warranty papers, that kind of thing, and I lost track of time. By the time I looked up it was almost 8 and fully dark outside, and my phone was down to 11% because I'd forgotten my charger. I told myself I'd finish the cabinet and go. That's the kind of decision that feels completely reasonable in the moment. Around 8:30, my mom's landline rang. The house still had it hooked up because canceling it required paperwork nobody had gotten around to. I almost didn't answer, but old habits, I picked it up, and there was nobody there, just a long silence and then a click. I figured it was a robocall or a wrong number and went back to the filing cabinet. About 20 minutes later it happened again. Same thing. Silence, then the click. That time I said hello, twice before hanging up, and I remember standing there afterward feeling unsettled in a way I couldn't quite name, like the silence on the other end had a texture to it, like someone breathing carefully so I wouldn't hear. I decided to finish up and leave. I went down to the kitchen to grab a trash bag I'd left by the back door, and that's when I noticed the door was unlocked. I was fairly sure I'd locked it when I arrived, the way I always did out of habit, but I told myself I probably just forgot, given how distracted I'd been all afternoon. I locked it again and went back upstairs. That's when my phone buzzed with a text from a number saved in my contacts as Mom. I actually laughed out loud when I saw the name pop up, this short, surprised laugh, before my brain caught up with what that meant. The message said, "Did you find the box in my closet yet?" I stood there staring at it for a long time. My mom's phone had been turned off by the carrier months earlier. After we canceled the plan, my dad had shown me the confirmation email himself. There was no reason that number should be able to send anything. I sat down on the edge of my mom's bed, the box still unopened in my lap, and read the message again and again until the words stopped looking like words. Part of me wanted to type back, to ask a question only she would know the answer to, some small test, and my thumb actually hovered over the keyboard for a second before I made myself stop, because some instinct underneath the grief and the hope was telling me very clearly that engaging with it further was a mistake. The way you know not to answer a knock at 3 in the morning even when part of you wants to see who it is. I called my dad, but it went to voicemail. He was at a poker night with my uncle and always silenced his phone. I texted my boyfriend instead, told him something weird was happening, and he called me right away and told me to just leave, go home, figure it out from somewhere safe, and I almost did. But I was standing right outside my mom's closet at that point, and the phone buzzed again.
It's the blue one on the top shelf, behind the sweaters.
I hadn't told anyone I was near that closet. I hadn't told anyone about a box at all. I want to explain why I didn't run immediately, because people always ask that. Some part of me, the part that had spent a year missing her so badly it felt physical, wanted so desperately for it to actually be her that I stood in that hallway for almost a full minute just staring at my phone, hoping. It's a specific kind of stupid that grief makes you. My boyfriend was still on the phone telling me to get out, and I told him to hold on, and I opened the closet. There was a blue box on the top shelf, behind the sweaters, exactly where the text said. Inside were old letters, photographs, a few pieces of jewelry I didn't recognize.
I stood there holding it, and somewhere behind me, downstairs, I heard the back door open.
Not the lock turning, the door itself opening, that particular creak in the change in air pressure you feel in an old house when an outside door swings wide. I hadn't imagined locking it the second time. I know I locked it. My boyfriend heard me go completely silent on the phone and started saying my name over and over, and I remember whispering to him that someone was in the house, and he told me to get somewhere I could lock myself in. So I went into my mom's bathroom, the only room upstairs with a lock that still worked, and I sat on the floor behind the door with the box still in my arms, listening. I heard slow footsteps moving through the downstairs rooms, unhurried, almost searching, cabinet doors opening and closing in the kitchen, then quiet for a long stretch, then the stairs. I did not hear anyone reach the top. At some point the footsteps just stopped, and the house went completely silent, and I sat there for what my phone later showed was almost 25 minutes, my boyfriend still on the line, both of us barely breathing.
At some point during that silence, my phone buzzed once against my leg, and I looked down expecting a message from him, but it was a new text from that same contact, my mother's name lighting up the screen again, and all it said was, "You always were careful."
I didn't answer.
I don't think I could have moved my thumbs even if I'd wanted to, and I remember pressing my hand flat over my own mouth without deciding to, terrified that even the sound of my breathing might carry through the door, before headlights swept across the bathroom window.
It was the police. My boyfriend had called them the moment I told him someone was inside. 2 officers cleared the house room by room. Nobody was there. The back door was shut and locked from the inside, the way I always left it. No sign of forced entry, no footprints on the porch, though it hadn't rained and the ground wouldn't have held them anyway. I never got another text from that number, not once, in the 3 years since. My dad had the account fully closed the following week after I told him what happened, and the carrier confirmed the number had already been disconnected and reassigned to no one for months prior. It should not have been able to send anything, and when I pushed the customer service rep on the phone to explain how a text could have come from a deadline, she read the same account notes back to me twice, in the same flat voice, like the question itself didn't compute on her end either, and eventually just said she'd escalate the ticket, which I never heard back about. I still have the messages saved as screenshots, because the thread itself is gone now, the contact deleted, though I didn't delete it myself. We sold the house about 4 months later to a young couple who seemed nice enough. I think about them sometimes, whether the landline ever got disconnected, whether they've ever stood in that upstairs hallway at night and had their phone light up with a name they weren't expecting. I never told the new owners any of this, and I still don't know if that was the right call.
I keep the blue box on a shelf in my own closet now, and every once in a while, usually late, usually when I'm home by myself, I'll get a text that shows no sender number at all. Just 3 dots that appear like someone's typing, and then nothing, for hours, until I finally stop watching and go to sleep.
Someone stood outside my front door for 6 hours straight one night, perfectly still, close enough that I could hear them breathing through the wood, and when I finally worked up the nerve to open it at dawn, the porch was empty except for a patch of frost that hadn't formed anywhere else on the deck, in the exact shape of 2 feet. That winter I was house-sitting for my uncle while he and his wife were in Portugal for 3 weeks, a long stretch, but the pay was good and I needed to save money, and it was just me and their elderly cat in a farmhouse about 15 minutes outside of town, way out past where the streetlights stop. I'd stayed there before for weekends and never thought twice about it. The nearest neighbor was almost half a mile down the road, an older couple who kept mostly to themselves. I want to say up front that I am not someone who scares easily. I'd lived alone in the city for years before this, walked home late plenty of times, never had an issue. This place felt safer than the city, if anything, at first. The first week was uneventful. I settled into a routine, work from my laptop during the day, feed the cat, take walks down the long gravel driveway when the weather allowed it. It was the second week when things started to feel different, though at the time I couldn't have told you exactly why. It started small. I'd come downstairs in the morning and find a kitchen chair pulled out from the table, just slightly, not enough to swear I hadn't done it myself and forgotten. The cat started sleeping in the front hall closet instead of her usual spot on the couch, which my uncle later told me she'd never done before, not once in the 11 years they'd had her. Around day 9, I was up late finishing some work, maybe 11:30, when I heard a car go by on the road outside, slow down, and then nothing. No engine sound continuing on, no engine sound reversing. I went to the window and looked out and didn't see any headlights or taillights anywhere on the road. I told myself I'd misjudged the distance, sound travels strangely out in the country at night, and went back to my laptop. About 40 minutes later, I heard footsteps on the gravel outside, slow, deliberate, coming up toward the house. I turned off the lamp next to me without really deciding to and sat in the dark, watching the front window. The footsteps stopped somewhere near the porch.
Then nothing.
I sat like that for probably 15 minutes, my heart going hard enough that I could feel it in my ears, before I convinced myself it was a deer. We got them in the yard constantly, and deer hooves on gravel can sound almost like footsteps if you're primed to hear them that way. I made myself get up and check the front window from an angle where I wouldn't be visible against the light, and the porch looked exactly as it always did, empty, the motion light dark and unlit, which struck me as odd only later, because that light had gone off for every raccoon and possum that had ever wandered through. I went to bed. I didn't sleep well, and I kept the hallway light on for the first time since I'd arrived. The next few nights were quiet, and I mostly forgot about it, the way you do when nothing confirms your fear. Then, on what I think was day 13, I was in the kitchen around 10 at night doing dishes, and I glanced up at the window over the sink, which faces the front porch, and there was a shape standing there.
Not moving, not doing anything, just a person-shaped silhouette on the other side of the glass, maybe 8 feet away, facing the house.
I dropped the plate I was holding into the sink. By the time I looked again, whatever it was had gone, if it had ever really been there at all, And I spent a long time telling myself it was a trick of the porch light and my own reflection layered oddly over the dark yard. I called my uncle that night. The time difference meant it was already morning for him, and I told him what had happened, feeling a little ridiculous saying it out loud. He didn't dismiss it the way I expected. He got quiet for a second and then told me there was a shotgun, unloaded, in the closet of the guest room, and shells in the top drawer of his dresser, in case I ever felt like I needed it, which was not the reassurance I'd been hoping for. He also said if I wanted to leave and stay in a motel for the rest of the trip, he'd cover it, no questions asked. I said I'd be fine. I don't fully know why I said that. Pride, maybe, or just not wanting to admit how frightened I actually was. After we hung up, I went and found the shotgun anyway, just to know where it was, and stood there in the guest room closet holding it for a minute without loading it, feeling a little ridiculous and a little better at the same time. I texted a friend back in the city that night too, mostly to have someone else know where I was, and she offered to drive out and stay with me, but it was a 2-hour trip each way and I told her not to worry about it, which is a decision I've gone back and forth on ever since. 2 nights later is the night I opened with. I'd gone to bed around midnight, and I woke up sometime after 2 to the cat yowling in the hallway, a sound I'd never heard her make before, low and continuous.
I got up to check on her, and that's when I heard it, breathing, close, right on the other side of the front door, which was maybe 20 feet from where I stood in the hallway. Not wind. Not the house settling. Slow, deliberate breathing, the kind a person makes when they're trying to be quiet and can't quite manage it.
I did not open the door. I want to be honest that I thought about calling the police immediately, and I almost did, but some frozen part of my brain kept telling me that if I made noise, if I let whoever was out there know I'd heard them, something worse would happen than if I just stayed silent and waited it out. I don't know if that was the right instinct or just fear making decisions for me. I sat at the top of the stairs with the cat pressed against my leg and I listened to that breathing, on and off, sometimes fading like they'd stepped back, sometimes right up against the wood again, for hours.
At one point I heard what I was almost sure was a hand, flat against the door, dragging slowly downward, a long dry sound against the wood grain, and I had to bite down on my own sleeve to keep from making a sound.
I thought about the shotgun in the guest room, still unloaded, 20 feet away down a hallway I did not want to walk in the dark, and I decided the stairs were safer than moving anywhere else in the house, so I stayed exactly where I was. I watched the clock on my phone.
2:14. 3:40. 4:51.
Around 5:30 it finally stopped, and I didn't hear footsteps leave, no gravel, no car, nothing.
It just stopped, like whoever it was had simply stopped being there.
I called the police once the sun was fully up, more for my own peace of mind than anything, and 2 officers came out and walked the property. They found the frost, the 2-foot-shaped patch I mentioned, right at the edge of the porch, but nothing else, no footprints leading to or from it across the frost-covered lawn, which should have shown a trail either way. One of them told me it might have just been condensation pooling strangely from the porch roof dripping, which didn't explain why it was shaped the way it was, but I let it go because I didn't have a better explanation of my own to offer. I stayed for the rest of the 3 weeks. I moved a mattress into the room next to the front door and slept with the shotgun, loaded, propped against the nightstand, though I never had to use it and never heard the breathing again. My uncle and his wife came home on schedule, and I never told them the full extent of it, just enough to explain the mattress and why I flinched at the front door for a while afterward. I still house sit for them sometimes, in the summer now, never in winter. And I've never told anyone this next part, but the last night I was there, Packing up to leave, I found a single word scratched faintly into the inside of the closet door in the guest room, where the shotgun had been, small, easy to miss unless the light hit it right.
It just sat still, and I have never been able to decide if it was already there before I arrived, or if it wasn't.